this is the interesting thing for the fiction writers, especially those who are still young in the craft, to be aware of, is that I did not go to the leper colony. And most people assume, oh, you must have gone there. And you must, obviously you're also going to extend this and make this short story to a novel or something, because you seem to know the island well. But I did not go there. And I think what fiction writers do is we make stuff up, right? And so I've made a lot of stuff up. And I did a lot of research before I wrote the story, because I do think, although making stuff up is our job as fiction writers, honoring the space, especially if it's one foreign to us, is also our job. So I did do a lot of research. Funny enough, I didn't stumble across Elizabeth's book in my research, because your book was just out when I was finishing up my story. So I did a lot of research, but the story actually came to me originally in a series of pictures that a friend of mine brought back from his visit to Trinidad, and specifically Chaka Shikari. And I was so inspired by just the pictures. And I had all these questions for him. Where does it come from? Da, 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 da. And he had a very limited understanding or knowledge about the island, and I thought, I'm gonna find out whatever I can about this island. And I couldn't find out much. And so for me, part of writing the story was to answer all of these unanswered questions, which I think is a big part of my impulse to write anyway.
Questions about what?
Like what happened to the people, to the lepers who were there. There are a lot of different stories about, well, this happened X, Y, Z, but there was no official story of what had happened to the people who lived on a leper colony. And in the pictures that I saw, there were beds still there that the lepers slept on. In some cases, the beds were still made. And this was not a museum that people are not, nobody's taking care of it and upkeeping it. It's just stuff was still there. People's records were still there. You can file through, and my friend had taken pictures of, like, open up a file cabinet and taking pictures of files. And I just thought that was fascinating. There were tables there and bowls and spoons, and what happened to the people? And it had been a really thriving community, despite the fact that it was a sick community. It was a very thriving community of lepers and nuns and sometimes priests. And there was no real record of what had happened to them. So,
well, I can say that I went there several times, and it's an odd kind of, and in the years that I have been back and forth, people have come and just taking stuff out of it, so it's just a hollow place. But Chaka Shikari is shaped like a horseshoe, right? This. And Venezuela it goes up on the hill, and from there, on the top of the hill, is the second highest lighthouse in the world, actually. And the reason for that is you can just see Venezuela like you could almost touch it from Chaka Shikari. It's just amazing. But the waters between Chaka Shikari and Venezuela that's where all kinds of shipwreck. And it's an interesting story for Americans. Did you know the American part?
tell me.
The interesting
Let me see if I know.
is if you go up there, you will see the interesting story for Americans, because during World War II, of course, Trinidad is a British colony, and of course we are fighting the Germans, and the Germans would claim, and we had oil, so the Germans wanted to get Trinidad's oil, and they would come through come through that slip and come into Trinidad and get the oil. Their submarines would come on. So the British came up with this idea to extend a net from Venezuela to Shakashari to catch them. Yeah.
So who's going to write that story?
Oh, that actually is in my novel. But then the Americans said, "Fooey for that, just put some mines in there and blow them up," which is what happened. They just put the mines in there, and as the ship, and there's a calypso, Trinidad makes a calypso for everything. A German, I forgot his name, claimed that he foiled the American mines, and he showed his ticket from the Globe Theatre where he spent the afternoon watching the movies, and fueled his submarine and went back. But, so there are a lot of mines actually in Shakashikari, which makes it very dangerous.
But yes, people go all the time.
Yeah, but you have to go with someone because there's still those landmines going up there.
That being said, my friends who went didn't go with any special someone. So, I guess I'm lucky that they returned. No, they were sailing and just.
But they couldn't have gone further up.
Maybe.
Because you had to have
I like to believe that they were so lucky. It was meant to be. They came back with these pictures.
But it's an amazing. So tell us about your writing career. How did you decide that, what is the connection in this novella that seems to be to the rest of your collection in this age?
Well, actually, as misleading as it is, the novella is not the title story. The title story is actually one of the shortest stories in the collection. And the novella is a story called The International Shop of Coffins. Which has confused many people, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. But the thing that kind of brings all the stories together is the epigraph, which I found out after I had already put the stories together. The story actually of how these became a collection is kind of strange. Again, maybe interesting for the young fiction writers in the room. Because I know there's a few of you. I had written a bunch of stories over a 2 or 3 year period. I was writing a novel that is now in draft and I'm revising. And a novel takes a long time to write. It is hard. And you have to keep all this stuff in your head. And I was a young writer and I had been a poet, so I had come from very small, sonnet to then trying to write a very long thing. And so being able to keep it all in my head and also learn these new craft things was a challenge for me. So I thought, I'm going to teach myself different craft things by writing these short stories. But I didn't envision that they were going to actually be an entire collection. And the story is probably a little bit murky, and I'm probably making parts of it up because that is what fiction writers do. But at some point, I'm just lying to you. At some point, the woman who will become my editor, one of my editors, Fiona McCrae, who's in the room, big up Fiona. Had seen some of the stories. I'm not sure, can't quite remember how now, and was interested in seeing more of the stories and talking to me about them. So I went down there to her office and met with her, and she said, we quite like some of these stories. We wish you had some more. If you had a collection, we might be interested in it. And I said to her, oh, well, I have a collection, even though I didn't know if that was true. I'm a liar. So then I went home and I said, oh shit, do I have a collection? And I had to kind of look at the stories and decide if they had something that connected them, and they're not all written in the same place. Because I was really playing with form, playing with character, playing with dialogue. I was trying to just flex all my different writerly muscles in every story. So I wondered, is there anything in common? The characters, different narrators, different structures, everything is really different in each story. And I discovered that part of what was the same was just my impulse emotionally and the place that I was in my life, that all the stories had a similar kind of emotional theme. And then I found this epigraph, and I was kind of like praying to God, please help me get this book contract with Grey Wolf. And I found this epigraph, which actually is a prayer. It's a Catholic prayer to Saint Raphael, who's the patron saint of lovers and travelers. And the epigraph is, lead us towards those we are waiting for, those who are waiting for us. And it dawned on me that really encapsulated what was the theme of the whole collection and kind of needed a collection for me and for Grey Wolf also. Did I totally lie, Fiona? Okay.
Not totally.
Not totally.
Mostly true.
Okay, mostly true.
I think I wanted to read just a little bit more. The story of the guy who's in the jail and looking down.
Okay. And why?
Because I think you do I think it's such a wonderful story.
I'm just thinking of what part I should read, so I wanted to know your impulse.
Oh, no, no. And I've heard you read that part before. You read that with Marielle.
Yeah. How long would you like me to read a little bit?
Just about what you read for Marielle.
Oh, I don't remember. I really don't. Like 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. I remember now, actually. Now that I'm looking at it, I remember. Because I've marked it.
Okay.
So, perfect. This is why you should keep your same book, again, for the up-and-coming fiction writers. Smart stuff. Okay. This story is called Kill the Rabbits, and it's written in 3 different voices, and each character tells his or her version of the story. And one character is a girl who seems to have this incredible allure, and 2 men fall in love with her, and they are the other narrators. One is a white guy who's new to the island. His name is Herman, and he falls in love with this strange woman, Zika. Zika tells her story. And then there's Cooper, who is the other guy who falls in love with Zika. And both Herman and Cooper get into trouble because of their love for Zika. And since Elizabeth asked, I will read from Cooper. It's a night of Easter Sunday. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Without the mic? Okay. It is a night of Easter Sunday. I've already been to chapel and received God on my tongue. I sit in my cell with the lights off, everyone's light is off. I wait for the man with the cross to begin his walk. He's been doing it once a year for the whole 12 years I've been in here. Carnival is coming in a few weeks. The queens have already had their pageants. The steel bands are practicing every night until late in the morning. But this man, he will come. I believe. He always comes. And I wait for him. And I think about why he is doing his penance, and I think about why I am doing mine. I have a view of the sea. During Carnival, I can hear all the music. I can fling a note down onto the parade revelers, hoping it gets to the big bump woman that I like the best. At night, I hang my hands out of the bars, palms open and cup the salt air. They say they will move me to the big jail in St. Croix, but they haven't yet. Maybe they won't ever. From my cell, I can look over the parking lot at Fort Christian and think about how maybe in an earlier life, I would be locked up in there instead, in a dark cell with thick red stone walls. But even then, I'd still have my view of the sea. I've only been in the fort once, for a field trip in 7th grade, where I feigned disinterest as I closely studied the walls and passageways for how a man in those days could use shadow and color to escape. Now they use it to give classes to the kids who are really good at painting. Imagine that, an old jail used for art classes. Me, I wasn't so good at art. I wanted to be a magician. My mother bought me video cassettes that came with foam balls and a magic wand. I studied the cassettes. I rewound them until they worked, would stop and skip and pause at the most inconvenient places. They instructed on how to pinch a foam ball between your knuckles and still wave your hands, which words to avoid with a plastic coin wedged under your tongue. But the biggest part of the magic was the trick of convincing your audience that you have indeed yielded everything. Look, my hands are empty. Nothing behind my hair, my sleeves are loose. The confidence it took to say, look inside the cup. See, nothing there. Even though you know that if they decide to touch the cup, if they ask you to pour water in the cup, if they even walk over to your side of the table to see the back of the cup, the trick would fail. Confidence is the biggest trick. When I was about 10 years old, I learned to lie. This, as with my other vices, came of love. I loved raw brown sugar. I loved that the grains were thick and amber colored. I loved that if you put some in your mouth, you had to crunch on them and they wouldn't melt like the dust of the bleached kind. I loved the smell of molasses that the brown grains gave off. Like a girl in my 5th grade class who wore lipstick, the white sugar seemed smooth and fake. We didn't get brown sugar in-house that often because it was more expensive, but sometimes my mother would need it and then I would find ways to devour it. On the day I learned to lie, I poured myself a glass of milk. To sweeten it, I poured in some brown sugar straight from the bag. I sipped the milk, continued pouring and sipping until I had a cup of drenched sugar with a shallow layer of milk on top. I was impressed with myself for making this new treat and for hiding it like a magician. I put away the bag of sugar, sat it on the table, and went ahead to eat my milk sugar with a spoon. That was when my mother swung in. If you ask me now, I think she must have seen me doing this all along. She must have waited for me. She took up the bag of brown sugar and asked me why the bag was so near empty. And I shrugged and sipped my milk, careful not to gather up any of the sugar. Cooper, how much sugar you put in your milk? None, mommy. So then, where all the brown sugar that was in this bag, Cooper? I don't know. You better tell me or you're gonna get beat. So what does it mean to have the truth all about it? If she knew, why didn't she just take the cup from me? What was it so important that I confess? Mommy, I don't know where the sugar gone. Come here, Cooper. I got up on the table and walked to her, not once looking back at the cup to incriminate myself. When I was close enough, she grabbed me by the arm like I imagined she must grab robbers on the street before lowering them into her squad car. Why are you lying, Cooper? Just tell me. Mommy, but I don't know nothing. She raised her hand and smacked me on the arm. I still didn't know. She unleashed her belt and brought it down on my back, and I didn't know. Again and again, I didn't know. I crouched on the floor crying. She went to the table and snatched up my cup and poured it out into the sink. I stared with horror and disbelief as the sugar came slopping out. A whole cup of my brown sugar. How did it get there, Cooper? But I didn't know. I had no idea. She beat me again and again until she was tired and my body was welted. And I never knew how the sugar got into the cup. Finally, she let me be. You scare me, Cooper, she said, as she left me welted on the floor. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out how the sugar got in the cup. Somewhere in my body, I knew I had done it. Somewhere in me was the memory of pouring the sugar or crunching the sugar in my teeth. But if you had given me a lie detector test, I would have passed, I tell you. The only rule of good lying is the ability to convince yourself. So of course, I became a thief. I couldn't help the cliche, which didn't go over well with my mother, who you figured out by now was a cop. My guess is that she's the reason they keep me here in this St. Thomas jail. She likes to visit me and make sure the guards are sneaking me in a bit of that skunk ganja from Jamaica. Most of the time I'm by myself at night. If the moon is big, I'll be looking at the tide pulling in hard and slow, looking at a crazy man jogging and punching the air like a boxer, looking at a car drive by every now and then, so it made sense that it was me who saw the white man with the cross on his back. No long robe, no crown of thorns, just a big wooden cross, bigger than his whole body. And when he stumbled and fell almost into the water, there was no Simon there to share the burden of that heavy wood. Just me above, waiting and watching.